Shaun Haney here with RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. It's time to talk about wheat, and we're joined right now by two people from Limagrain Cereals. We're joined by Bailey Jenks, who is out of Pendleton, Oregon. Bailey, how are we doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Also joined
Good.
by Zach Thibault. Zach is out of Bozeman, Montana. Zach, how are we doing?
I'm doing great, Shaun. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so we've a couple different chats we've had with people from Limagrain Cereals. We've been talking about the opportunity for wheat in the rotation. And today we're going to talk about maximizing ROI, the return on investment on every acre when it comes to wheat production. Now, when we think about, putting wheat in the ground, one of the things or the considerations that farmers have all the time, Bailey, is bin run versus certified. Talk about that and some of the equations.
Yeah. So bin run meaning, not buying certified seed every year versus buying certified seed every year, right? So there's a little bit of a perk to buying certified seed every year. You know that it's a quality standard. You know exactly what you're going to be buying. It's been inspected. It's been run through all of the testing that needs to be done. You're not going to have any weed seeds or inert material in that seed when you buy it. So that's definitely a perk when you're buying certified seed. Anything that comes out of the bin, you don't necessarily know what was in that crop last year. You don't know what the storage conditions were. It's essentially just a breeding ground for diseases and could potentially hurt your yield going into the next year.
Zach, when you have customers ask you about, do I got to buy certified or can I just, save some of my seed? What's some of your answers to them?
Well, very similar to what Bailey touched on, given in Montana, farmers being able to keep their own seed is a very, very deciding factor when it comes to them choosing a variety, along with a couple other things. But, they feel like it is their crop and they have the right to keep their seeds. But, one thing I urge is you don't know what kind of disease pressure you got that previous year. You might, but you don't know if there's a bunch of carryover in the seed. Bailey touched on, the storage situation, and that's just a breeding ground for insects to cause damage to the seed, which affects your germination. Now, if you aren't buying certified seed, you aren't, in my opinion, you're not starting your crop year off on the right foot. Odds are you're probably not going to hit your targeted plant population and make sure that is okay from the beginning. But if you are a guy that runs your own seed, hopefully you're still getting it clean, but you don't know what was in that cleaner that came to your farm and cleaned your seed. So the risk of contamination goes through the roof, and disease can carry over into the seed, which will affect your next crop year. And then we're talking major, major yield impacts, and you were never off at a good start from the beginning.
Yeah, and there's a lot of risk out in the marketplace right now. Like there's tons of risk. And the last thing we want to do is sort of have a self-inflicted wound where we create some of our own problems, and where we really add risk to the equation is where we use bin run and we don't get it tested. As you sort of alluded to there. That's where we're heightening the risk there, and it can create some real challenges, Bailey.
Yeah, absolutely. And Zach brought up a good point too. In other regions, not necessarily in the Pacific Northwest, but in other regions, there's a lot of on-farm storage.
Yep.
And having that availability is nice for farmers, but it's also kind of it's almost like a tempting to run your own seed through that. And the difference in Zach's region versus my region in the PNW is we don't have a whole lot of on-farm storage. We have the Snake River and the Columbia River and the lock system and the barge system. So we're constantly moving our wheat out of our storage facilities. So we don't really need a lot of that on-farm storage. So, seed cleaning facilities in the PNW are retailers, right? So a lot of these guys are getting their seed from retailers, whereas in Zach's region, having a lot of that on-farm storage, a lot of times you're having seed cleaners come out to your place, and there's a lot less regulation and a lot less oversight on those types of farmers versus the guys that are going to their retailers and getting certified seed every year.
So Zach, when we look at trying to get that ROI on every single acre, how does do traits and weed control options play a factor into this?
Well, I think the beauty of the coaxium system is that you don't see a yield drag with coaxium varieties that you do with, typically the Clearfield system. I've seen our data on our coaxium wheats that our coaxium hard red spring wheat out yields most conventionals in certain growing areas. And so, staying on top of your annual weeds, your cheatgrass, your downy brome, your goat grass, if you have that issue, staying on top of that, I think is number one when it comes to trying to maximize your yield potential for that crop year. Don't let your weeds get away from you. And the beauty of that coaxium system is you can do all of this and not miss out on the yield potential. I urge guys to take a look at their rotation, and if it works for them, great. If they don't need it and they don't want to pay for it, that's totally fine. But the minute you let your weeds become a bigger problem, you're going to end up putting more money back into that section, that field, than if you would have just managed it from the get-go.
Yeah, and tackling those weeds early is it's critical across many crop types, and wheat is definitely a part of that narrative for sure. Bailey, talk about in your region some of the from a coaxium standpoint in that decision.
Yeah, so coaxium, we've had a feral rye, downy brome, jointed goatgrass issue in the P&W for a long time. When Clearfield first came out, that was the first traded wheat that we were dealing with here in the P&W. And the use of that system has just gone to a point where we're not seeing the same efficacy, right? So we're the beauty of, like Zach said, this coaxium system is a different trait, a different group of herbicide, or different herbicide group that you're putting on to this field. But Zach also pointed out that the yield drag on these coaxiums is nearly non-existent, right? You're looking at some of these coaxiums versus conventionals. And I do want to point on the fact that even though these coaxiums are certified seeds, so they are a little bit more expensive, the yield drag, that's what you're paying your royalty on, is you're paying for the research and the breeding efforts that go into creating these varieties that will then, perform in such a way on your farm. So, some guys are hesitant to spend money on the certified seed, but if you think about it, that certified seed royalty rate goes back to these breeding programs that will then produce these varieties that aren't going to cause yield drags, or that are, increasing your yield average year after year after year just with new genetics.
Yeah, and as we're trying to battle, diseases like whether it's fusarium or it's rust, we need to have more research happening so that we have those next stage, those better genetics into the future that are able to fend off some of those, because those diseases are adapting, right? They're changing, they're maneuvering, and so we've got to stay on top of it.
There's even, even in my region, Washington and Oregon versus South Idaho, there's technically different rust strains that come across those two regions based on wind patterns. So, the importance of knowing what your varieties are going to do in different regions and constantly start trying to stay in front of that disease curve, and, getting varieties to the market to when that disease pressure is there and when you can actually have a fit is really important to farmers. And it takes a long time for these varieties to be developed, right? So, we're releasing varieties now that have been crossed multiple years ago. So, was the rust disease pressure the same this year as it was 10 years ago when we made the cross? No way. There's different races out there, right? So we're constantly having to look at all of these different genetics in our breeding program. And that's what that's the importance of certified seed, is that's what fuels our research program to bring new genetics to the marketplace for growers.
Zach, for farmers, things to be aware of on the intellectual property side, whether, from a PVP and the patents, like I think some people they hear some of these things and they don't fully understand that whole landscape. Where does that factor into these considerations?
Yeah, so there are two types of PVP, Plant Variety Protection Act. The first one is just a normal PVP. That means that if a farmer grows a PVP variety, he can keep that seed, but he cannot sell it. So the PVP protects that sale from farmer to farmer. That the big difference between PVP and PVP5 is that there can be on PVP5 there can be no transaction of a seed that is common class. So after it is certified, if a farmer grows certified seed, that crop has to go to the elevator. Now, a lot of people think that because it is PVP5, farmers cannot keep their seed. They can still keep their seed with PVP Title 5. There just can be no transaction of a common class seed. The only thing that prevents growers from keeping their own seed for multiple crop years is either a single season use agreement or CSO, which is a certified seed only. And that comes into effect with typically the genetic supplier. It's more of a contractual agreement from the genetic supplier to either their dealers who then pass that on to their growers. But a CSO or single season use agreement is not managed by the Department of Ag, whereas PVP violations are.
Yeah. So important to talk to your local Limagrain cereal seed rep, or also talk to the elevator processor?
Yeah, I would probably urge to either talk to your local seed retailer or give your Limagrain rep a
Yeah.
call.
Most
Most
of the
traded
time,
wheats,
oh, go ahead, Zach.
most traded wheats, actually all traded wheats that I know of, meaning it's either in the coaxium production system or Clearfield, are going to be PVP Title 5 with a CSO, or they might just be a normal PVP, but they do require the use of certified seed no matter the trade. Whereas our conventionals are going to be a normal PVP, and then our barleys also we attach a single season use agreement to those varieties as well.
Well, eventually the snow is going to melt and the growing season will be here. And it's been great to catch up on thinking about wheat in 2025 from an ROI perspective on all the acres. So, Bailey, have yourself a great day. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And you too, Zach.
Thanks, Shaun. Have a good one.
If you have any feedback, comments, questions on any of this, you can also send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com.